Έχουμε μαζί μας έναν πραγματικά και μεταφορικά και πραγματικά υψηλό καλεσμένο. Είναι ο πρέσβης της Ολλανδίας, Versteeg, ο οποίος θα μας μιλήσει για το Orange Grove, την προσπάθεια την οποία έχει κάνει για να βοηθήσει εμάς, πάνω απ' όλα. Your Excellency, the floor is yours. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much. And my compliments to the organizers for assembling this group of people and also this set of companies that supports you. I know that there's a lot of hard work involved and it's not easy to get so many people of a good quality for this sort of activities. I was invited here and I think this invitation may be part of a long tradition. I think for centuries already organizers of important events invited diplomats to decorate their event, to add some status to the event. And some of you might think maybe this Dutch ambassador is also here to have Infocom, have the ICT world join a centuries-long tradition. Actually, I hope that's not the case. I hope that there's also an interest in what we are doing, what we have been doing as the Dutch embassy, with a large number of Greek and Dutch companies and many friends of the Greek startup ecosystem in the past year. We established last year a co-working space with an entrepreneurship program, let's say an incubator, at the premises of the Dutch embassy. We started September 2013. We had 45 little companies in Orange Grove in the past year. About 90 people were involved. At current, there's about 35 companies still there. And for us, it's been quite an experience, and I hope and think also for those that participated in this program. Many people might be wondering, why have you been doing this? Well, I think the first reason for us was basically the realization that probably one of the big challenges for most European countries, but especially for Greece, is to keep its talents here, to prevent that people move away to other countries or that people spend their time not really learning something, but being inactive or being in jobs that are not really what they're educated for. And that is probably a tremendous drain on the future of a country when that happens. And I was impressed when I spoke to, for instance, alumni of Dutch universities in Greece. They said, well, basically, from my group of friends, I'm about the only one that's still here. All the others are somewhere else. Well, that is definitely something that you wish to avoid, because the good news is, of course, that people learn something when they work abroad. The bad news is that most people, especially the good ones, only come home after they turn 50 somehow. At least that's what economic research says, that is usually what happens with this sort of migration of talent. So we thought, well, maybe we should do something about that. Or you could also say, let's phrase it positively. Helping startups off the ground, having a flourishing startup ecosystem can be very important for a distressed economy, like, for instance, the Greek one. Greece is going through a tremendous transition, and it's not just what's happening everywhere, that we're transiting from a traditional economy to what they used to call the new economy. It's also a transition of the production of a lot of so-called non-tradable goods, stuff that you basically cannot trade to other countries, to the production of things that you can actually export. In order to do that, you need investments, because you need new productive capacity. It will be very difficult to attract large-scale investment from abroad, because basically investors can choose any country at the moment to invest, and every country is doing its very best to attract foreign investors. So it's much better to use the talent that is there to try to build up something itself. In Holland, we found out that 60% of all the new jobs that were created in the past year were in small and medium-sized enterprises younger than 5 years. So these small and medium-sized enterprises, these new enterprises, actually are economically very relevant, 60% of all the new jobs created. So that was another reason to do it. And then you might wonder why an embassy? Why on earth does an embassy do this? That also is, of course, related to the fact that we are pretty concerned about the current very negative climate in Europe. You hear all kinds of prejudices in the northern countries about the southern countries, in the southern countries about the northern countries, what have you. In order to show what synergies there are, what collaboration actually can bring, we try to do this sort of projects. We haven't regretted it. I think it was, as I said, very rewarding to work with these young people. We offer to them a workspace, which is an open space concept in order to stimulate collaboration between the startups, which is actually happening. You see a lot of collaboration between these little companies. And actually, my thesis is that the strongest companies are those that collaborate most. Sounds a bit like an advertisement, but I think that it's empirically proven. At least in Orange Grove, the really good ones are the ones that don't isolate themselves, but that are looking for collaboration with the others and that are trying to enlarge their teams. The companies in Orange Grove are not all typical ICT companies, but there's no company that doesn't have an ICT strategy, that doesn't have an internet strategy. But some of them try to combine, let's say, the old economy with the new economy. They're in agriculture, but they have a smart ICT strategy to that. Or in tourism, that's also a big bunch. But there's also a couple of strict ICT companies, app builders, etc. The second issue that I wanted to address is, and I was asked to address is, how do you see the future of this Greek startup ecosystem, or this sort of activities here? I think there are three main challenges, but I would also be interested to hear the others' opinions, and I think in the panel there will also be opinions about that. Three main challenges. First challenge is not funding, I think. Funding is often quoted as the biggest challenge, but I think in my sequence it would come third. The first challenge is to widen the base, to have a much larger group of people that actually think starting an enterprise myself, starting a company myself is an option. I sometimes make this calculation. Imagine in Attica there's about 5 million people at the moment. About 1 million of them, very rough figures, 1 million of them might be in the relevant age group, 1 million people. 600,000 of them have a higher degree of education, 600,000. 60% of those, according to official figures, are jobless. 360,000 higher educated people in Attica that are jobless. Maybe I made the calculation wrong, let's say a factor 5 wrong. Let's say there's 80,000 or 70,000 people in that situation. Even in that case, the gap between those 70,000 and the 300 people that are actually now active in the Athens startup ecosystem is enormous. Hundreds of thousands of people for which this could be interesting, a couple of hundred of people that are actually out there doing it. So I think the big challenge for all of us, for all these people that care about this startup ecosystem, is to widen that group, to convince not only people that come from university, but also their parents, the environment, that it's something perfectly respectable and feasible to start up a company themselves, to do something with all that knowledge that they have. So I think that's the biggest challenge, because also when you want a couple of very successful enterprises, you need to start with a broad base and then try to select the best ones. Second challenge, I think it is useful to have good entrepreneurship programs, because it's a lonely world out there if you're young and there isn't a very extensive ecosystem supporting you, and it's very useful to be in a place in the right environment where you meet interesting people, where you meet people, angel investors, venture capitalists, people that have some relevant knowledge, developers, etc., instead of being on your own. So I think co-working spaces, incubators, etc., are also very important. Why are they important? I think also to bring those people that start at the base to the stage of maturity in which they really need or can handle the funding to make them ready for their job. Because what people told me over the last year, and I think Lucas Pilitzis, who will be in the panel, he is a venture capitalist running one of the 4 Jeremy funds. He was also somebody that said that actually there aren't too many fundable projects around. It's now growing, but it's a relatively new thing. So to get from the stage of a nice idea and 1 or 2 guys with a brilliant mind to a fundable project, to a little enterprise that actually is going to work, is still quite a challenge, and the entrepreneurship programs can help with that. And then in the third place, and then I will conclude, I think there is the issue of funding, which basically, as far as I can see, is there at 2 stages. The very initial stage, some people would be helped by having a small loan of, let's say, seed funding or for covering their cost of living, because one of the other things that I think I see also in the Orange Grove community is that a lot of people can't dedicate all their time to what they're doing. So they're doing this startup as a part-time job. That doesn't work. All successful startuppers will say you have to work about 20 hours a day on your startup, not just the 2 or 3 hours that you can spare from your other activities. So it would help if people would have a loan covering their basic costs. I'm told that a loan is much better than a grant because a loan helps people to realize what the value of money is. So even in Holland, where money is not as expensive as it is unfortunately in Greece, even there these startup people that take one of these microcredits, they pay interest rates of about 9%, which is very high, but still the people backing those programs say it's much better to have that stimulus there than just to give away the money. Then there is, of course, at some point the issue of the real equity funding, but my feeling is that for good ideas, good teams, at the right stage of maturity, it should be possible to find a funding. Very last challenge, of course, everybody's also talking about the environment, the rules, regulations, hindrances that you have, tax legislation, etc. Definitely there are things out there. They exist in Greece, it exists in Holland, it exists everywhere. I think that there is now an awareness that rules and regulations are lagging behind for this development and that things have to be done. This morning, I know that Minister Dendias was visiting a number of incubators, amongst which Orange Grove, and he and his team are definitely looking into what has to be done there. So that's at least encouraging that the interest is there and that people realize what this can mean and what is needed for that. Many thanks for your attention, and I wish you all the best. Thanks.